Jake Sullivan stood in the main hall of the UES Horizon, his hands clasped behind his back. The uniform felt too tight around his neck. Or maybe that was just his nerves. He had fought in dozens of battles during the war, faced death more times than he could count, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The doors at the far end of the hall opened with a soft hiss. Jake's breath caught in his throat as the Xalthari delegation entered. There were 5 of them, each towering over the tallest human in the room. Their skin glowed with soft purple light that seemed to pulse in rhythm with their breathing. They moved with an odd grace, their long limbs flowing like water. At the center of the group walked Princess Lyra Esh. She was taller than the others, nearly 7.5 feet. Her skin shifted between shades of violet and deep blue. Where the others had eyes of solid silver, hers seemed to ripple and change like liquid metal. A small device attached to her throat hummed quietly, translating her words into English. "Commander Sullivan," she said as she approached. Her voice had strange harmonics to it, like music playing just beyond hearing range. "I am honored to meet you." Jake forced himself to bow slightly, the way the diplomats had taught him. "The honor is mine, Princess." Captain Helen Morris stepped forward from where she had been standing near the viewport. She was a stern woman, with gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Shall we begin the ceremony? Shall we begin? 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 Shall we begin the ceremony?" The next hour passed in a blur. Human and Xalthari officials took turns reading passages about peace and unity. Jake barely heard them. He kept his eyes forward, aware of Lyra, standing beside him. She was so tall that the top of his head barely reached her shoulder. When it came time for the vows, Jake repeated the words he had memorized. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, too loud in the quiet hall. Lyra spoke in her own language first, the sounds impossible for human vocal cords to reproduce. Then, the translator rendered her words in English. "I pledge myself to this union, for the good of both our peoples. May this bond bring peace where there was war, understanding where there was fear." Jake slipped the ring onto Lyra's 4th finger. Her skin was warm to the touch, warmer than he had expected. She wrapped a thin fiber around his wrist in return. The material seemed alive, pulsing with faint light. According to Xalthari custom, this bond would only break when one of them died. "It is done," announced the Xalthari elder, who had overseen their part of the ceremony. "They are joined." The gathered officials clapped politely. Jake noticed that not everyone looked happy about this arrangement. Admiral Green stood near the back, his face set in hard lines. He had made his objections clear during the planning meetings. Several Xalthari wore colors that Jake had learned meant displeasure or concern. Lyra turned to face him. "We have quarters prepared aboard the Eternal Dawn. It is traditional for the bonding night to take place in the bride's home." Jake nodded. He had known this was coming. "I understand." Captain Morris caught his eye as he and Lyra moved toward the exit. She gave him a small nod and the faintest hint of a smile. It was as close to encouragement as she ever gave. The trip to the Xalthari ship was short. Jake rode in a small shuttle with Lyra and 2 of her guards. Neither of them spoke during the journey. Jake stared out the window at the eternal dawn, growing larger as they approached. The ship was unlike anything humans had built. It looked organic, like it had been grown rather than constructed. The hull rippled with bioluminescent patterns that shifted and changed. There were no hard angles, no visible seams or joints. Everything flowed together in smooth curves. When they docked and stepped inside, Jake felt like he had entered a living creature. The walls were warm and seemed to breathe. Soft light emanated from the ceiling, pulsing gently. The floor adjusted beneath his feet, becoming softer or firmer as needed. Lyra led him through corridors that curved and branched in ways that made no logical sense. Several times Jake could have sworn they were walking uphill. But when he looked back, the passage appeared level. Other Zalthari passed them in the halls, their colors shifting as they noticed Jake. He heard whispers in their language that the translator didn't bother to interpret. Finally, they reached a door that opened at Lyra's approach. The quarters beyond were enormous. The ceiling stretched high above, dotted with floating crystals that hummed with energy. One wall was completely transparent, showing the stars beyond. Furniture rose from the floor where needed, reshaping itself to accommodate whoever sat on it. "These are my personal chambers," Lyra said. She moved to the center of the room and turned to face him. "Please, sit. We must talk before the night proceeds." Jake settled onto a bench that formed itself to match human proportions. The material was comfortable, like sitting on firm foam. Lyra remained standing, her colors shifting in patterns he was beginning to recognize as nervousness. "I know this is difficult for you," Lyra began. "This marriage was not your choice. You volunteered out of duty to your people." "The same could be said of you," Jake replied. Lyra's eyes rippled. "Indeed. We are both here because our peoples need peace more than they need our personal happiness." She moved closer. "But I want you to know that I will honor this bond. I will be a true wife to you, in whatever way our differences allow." Jake stood up. "I made a promise today. I intend to keep it. Not just because Earth needs this alliance, but because you deserve that much." For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Jake saw past the alien features to the person beneath. He saw someone who was just as uncertain as he was, just as afraid of failing. Someone who had volunteered to marry a stranger from a species she had been at war with for 10 years. "I lost people in this war," Jake said quietly. "Good soldiers. Friends. As did I," Lyra responded. Her colors darkened to deep purple. "My brother died at Kepler Station. He was a scientist, not a warrior. But he was on a medical ship when it was destroyed." Jake felt something twist in his chest. He had been at Kepler Station. He had been part of the fleet that attacked what they thought were warships. "I'm sorry. We have both done things we regret," Lyra said. "The war took from all of us. That is why we are here. To ensure it never happens again." She gestured to the seating area. "There is something I must tell you before we proceed with the bonding night. Something your diplomats do not know, because my people have kept it secret for thousands of years." Jake felt his soldier's instincts kick in. "What kind of secret?" Lyra's skin shifted through a dozen colors before settling on a deep, serious blue. "The bonding night is not what humans believe it to be. It is not simply a ceremony or a physical union. For my people, bonding is something far more profound, far more dangerous." "Dangerous how?" Jake asked. Lyra moved to the transparent wall and stared out at the stars. "When Zalthari bond with a mate, we do not simply join our bodies. We join our minds, our memories. Our very consciousness becomes one." Jake stood up slowly. "What exactly does that mean?" "It means that if we complete the bonding tonight, you will experience every memory I have ever had, every thought, every feeling. You will know everything about me, everything about my people." She turned to face him. "And I will know everything about you." The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. You would have access to classified military information, defense strategies, the location of Earth's colonies and bases. "Yes," Lyra said simply. "And you would know the location of every Zalthari world, our weapons technology, our weaknesses and vulnerabilities." She took a step toward him. "This is why bonding between our species has never been attempted. It requires complete trust, total vulnerability. One side could learn everything and use it to destroy the other." Jake's mind raced. This changed everything. If he went through with the bonding, he would essentially be giving the Zalthari every secret humanity possessed. But if he refused, the peace treaty would collapse. Everything would have been for nothing. Jake walked to the far side of the room, putting distance between himself and Lyra. His training told him to be cautious, to think strategically. But another part of him wondered why she was telling him this at all. "Why reveal this to me now?" he asked, turning to face her. "You could have waited until after. I wouldn't have known what was happening until it was too late." Lyra's colors shifted to a warm amber tone. "Because a bonding created through deception is worthless. It would be a violation that would poison everything between us, between our peoples. You deserve to make this choice with full knowledge of what it means." Jake leaned against the wall, feeling the warm surface adjust to support him. "If I refuse, what happens?" "Then we find another path," Lyra said. She moved to sit on the bench he had vacated. "Perhaps a marriage in name only. It will make the peace more fragile, but it might still hold. The council will not be pleased, but they will accept it." "And you?" Jake asked. "What will happen to you if I say no?" Lyra was quiet for a moment. Her skin dimmed slightly. "I will be seen as having failed, but I will survive. My honor is less important than doing what is right." Jake studied her carefully. In the soft light of the floating crystals, she looked almost vulnerable, despite her size. "You're taking a huge risk by telling me this. Your people kept this secret for thousands of years. They trusted you with it." "Too, they did," Lyra agreed. "And I am choosing to break that trust because I believe honesty is the only foundation for real peace. If we build our alliance on lies and secrets, it will crumble at the first challenge." Jake crossed his arms over his chest. "The generals back on Earth would call this a trap. They would say, 'You're testing me, seeing if I can be trusted with sensitive information.'" "Perhaps I am," Lyra said. Her eyes met his directly. "But I am also trusting you with the most sacred secret of my civilization. That is not something done lightly." "I mean attention." Jake began to pace. His mind worked through the possibilities, the angles, the risks. "Let me make sure I understand. If we go through with this bonding, we will share everything. Every memory, every thought, every secret." "Yes, and there is no way to hide anything? No way to block certain memories or thoughts?" "None," Lyra confirmed. "The bonding is complete and total. We would know each other more thoroughly than any two beings have ever known each other." Jake stopped pacing and looked at her. "Have you ever bonded before?" Lyra's colors flickered through several shades before settling on deep blue. "No, I am unbonded. In my culture, we wait for a mate we can trust completely. I had not found such a person before the war began." "So this would be your first time too," Jake said quietly. "Yes." Jake moved to the transparent wall and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, counting on him to make this alliance work. Somewhere out there were billions of people who needed this peace to last. But the cost was higher than anyone had imagined. "You said this is dangerous," Jake said, still looking at the stars. "What are the risks? What could go wrong?" Lyra stood and joined him at the wall, keeping a respectful distance. "The bonding process is intense. Our nervous systems are not naturally compatible. There will be pain at first, as our minds struggle to connect. Some who have attempted bonding across species differences, though never as great as ours, have suffered permanent damage." "What kind of damage?" "Loss of memory. Confusion between self and other. In rare cases, complete mental collapse." Lyra's voice was steady but serious. "I will not lie to you, Jake. This is dangerous for both of us. My people have never attempted it with a species as different from us as humans are." Jake turned to face her. "But you think it will work?" "I believe it is possible," Lyra said carefully. "Our medical experts have studied human neural patterns. They believe the bonding can succeed. But there are no guarantees." Jake let out a long breath. "This is insane. You know that, right? What you're asking is completely insane." "I know," Lyra said softly. I am asking you to risk your mind, your memories, your very sense of self. I am asking you to trust me with everything you are. It is perhaps the most unreasonable request one being can make of another, and yet you're willing to do the same, Jake said. You're willing to risk everything too. Lyra's colors brightened slightly. Yes. Because I believe it is the only way forward. Not just for peace, but for true understanding between our peoples. Jake walked back to the seating area and sat down heavily. He put his head in his hands, thinking. Everything he had been taught about security and operational safety screamed at him to refuse. Sharing classified information with a former enemy was treason. It would mean court-martial, probably execution, if he ever returned to Earth. But another part of him, the part that had volunteered for this mission in the first place, saw something different. He saw the possibility of ending the suspicion and fear that had caused the war. If humans and Zalthari could share everything, truly know each other, how could they remain enemies? Can I ask you something personal? Jake said, looking up at Lyra. Of course. Why did you volunteer for this marriage? You're a princess. You have status, power. You could have refused and let someone else take this risk. Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Then she gestured to the wall, and images appeared in the air. Jake saw cities in ruins, ships burning in the darkness of space. He saw faces, Zalthari faces, frozen in death. This was the colony of Veltara, Lyra said quietly. Your ships attacked it 3 years ago. 50,000 of my people died in a single day. She waved her hand, and the images changed. This was the medical station at Kepler. This was the trade outpost at Rigel 9. This was the science vessel, Luminous Hope. Jake recognized some of the battles. He had been there for a few of them. He felt a weight settle in his chest. My brother died on the Luminous Hope, Lyra continued. He was 23 years old. He had never fired a weapon in his life. He was researching better crop yields to feed our colonies. Her colors had gone dark, almost black. He sent me a message the day before he died. He was excited about his research. He thought he had found a way to grow food in low-light environments. I'm sorry, Jake said, and meant it. I have also killed humans, Lyra said, turning to face him. I was a fleet commander before this assignment. I gave orders that resulted in the deaths of thousands of your people. I watched human ships burn. I heard their distress signals as they died in the void. She moved closer to him. I carry that weight every day, and I decided that if there was any chance, any possibility of ending this cycle of death, I would take it. Even if it meant marrying a human. Even if it meant risking my life and my sanity. Jake stood up and looked into her strange, shifting eyes. He saw pain there, and regret, and a desperate hope that reminded him of what he saw in his own mirror. I lost my best friend at Proxima, Jake said quietly. His name was Danny. We grew up together, joined the military together. He died in my arms after a Zalthari missile strike. His last words were asking me to tell his daughter he loved her. I am sorry, Lyra said. I've killed Zalthari too, Jake continued. I was at Veltara. I was part of the assault force. I still see their faces sometimes when I close my eyes. They stood in silence for a moment. 2 former enemies, sharing their grief. Jake walked to the far corner of the room, his mind working through everything Lyra had told him. The floating crystals hummed softly above him, their light pulsing in a rhythm that seemed almost like a heartbeat. He could feel Lyra watching him, waiting patiently for his decision. How long do I have to decide? Jake asked, without turning around. As long as you need, Lyra replied. There is no time limit. The bonding can happen tonight, tomorrow, or never. The choice is entirely yours. Jake appreciated that. No pressure, no manipulation. Just a simple choice that would determine the fate of billions of people. He almost laughed at the absurdity of it. He thought about Captain Morris and her final words to him before he left the horizon. You're not just representing yourself, Sullivan. You're representing all of humanity. But don't forget that you're still human. Trust your instincts. His instincts were torn. The soldier in him said this was too dangerous, too risky. But the man who had seen too much war, who was tired of the killing, saw an opportunity, a real chance at peace, not just a temporary ceasefire that would collapse at the first sign of trouble. Can I ask you more about the bonding process? Jake said, turning to face Lyra. Of course. You said we would share memories. Does that mean I would experience your entire life? Everything you've ever done? Or thought? Lyra moved closer, her colors shifting to a thoughtful purple. Yes and no. The bonding does not transfer memories like copying files from one computer to another. It is more like opening a door between our minds. In the moment of bonding, we would experience each other's most significant memories, the ones that shaped who we are. Later, as bondmates, we could access other memories if we needed to. So it's not just a one-time thing, Jake said. The connection would be permanent. Yes, once bonded, we would always have a connection. Not mind-reading, exactly, but a sense of each other, an awareness. Lyra sat down on the bench. Bonded mates among my people can sense each other's emotions from great distances. They know when the other is in danger or distress. Jake considered this. That could be useful in some situations. It could also be difficult. Lyra said honestly. Imagine feeling someone else's pain, their fear, their anger. Imagine never being truly alone with your thoughts. Sounds overwhelming. It can be. That is why Zalthari choose their bondmates very carefully. The bond is forever. There is no divorce, no separation, except through death. Jake sat down across from her. What happens if one of us dies? What happens to the survivor? Lyra's colors dimmed. The loss of a bondmate is devastating. The survivor loses part of themselves. Many never fully recover. Some choose to die rather than live without their bonded partner. That's intense. It is the price of true intimacy, Lyra said. To know someone completely, to be known completely, creates a connection that cannot be broken without causing tremendous pain. Jake leaned back, staring at the ceiling. And you're willing to risk that? With a human you just met. Someone you were at war with until yesterday. I am willing because I see no other path to real peace, Lyra said. Treaties can be broken. Agreements can be violated. But a bond, a true bond of shared consciousness, cannot be faked or undone. If we bond, your people will know that I cannot betray them without betraying myself. And my people will know the same about you. Jake sat up straight. That's it, isn't it? That's the real reason for this. Not just to create peace between us, but to create a guarantee, living proof that our peoples can trust each other. Yes, Lyra said. If we succeed, if we can bond and survive and thrive together, others will follow. Humans and Zalthari working together, bonding together. Over time, the barriers between our species will dissolve. And if we fail, then the peace will likely fail as well. Those who want war will point to our failure as proof that our species cannot coexist. Lyra's colors shifted to a determined red. That is why I chose to tell you the truth. If we bond out of ignorance or deception, we will fail. But if we bond with full knowledge and willing hearts, we have a chance. Jake stood up and began pacing again. He thought about his life, his career, everything he had worked for. If he went through with this, he would never be the same. His mind would forever carry memories of being Zalthari, of seeing the universe through alien eyes. Could he live with that? But if he refused, he would have to live with the knowledge that he had chosen his own comfort over the possibility of ending the war. How many people would die because he was too afraid to take the risk? Tell me about your brother, Jake said suddenly. The one who died at Kepler. Lyra looked surprised by the question, but her colors warmed. Thelran was curious about everything. Even as a child, he was always asking questions. always wanting to understand how things worked. Our parents used to joke that he would take apart the entire world just to see what was inside. A small smile crossed Jake's face. Danny was like that too. Always tinkering with things, trying to make them better. He once took apart his father's car engine to see if he could improve it. Did he succeed? No. He was 12. He had no idea what he was doing. Jake laughed at the memory. His father was furious. But Danny was so excited about what he had learned that he couldn't understand why everyone was upset. Thelran was the same way, Lyra said, her colors brightening. He once accidentally released a genetically modified plant into the royal gardens. It grew so fast it covered the entire palace in 3 days. He was grounded for a month, but he kept a sample and continued studying it. They shared a moment of connection over their lost friends. Jake realized that this was what the bonding could do. Not just share tactical information or strategic secrets, but create understanding at a human level, or Zalthari level, or both. I have a question, Jake said. A personal one. Ask. Are you afraid? Of the bonding? I mean, Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Her colors cycled through several shades before settling on a deep, honest blue. Yes. I am terrified. I will be opening my mind to someone whose species I have fought against for 10 years. Someone who has killed my people. I will be vulnerable in a way I have never been before. But you're still willing to do it. I am, because I believe in the possibility of what we could achieve. Lyra stood and moved to the transparent wall, looking out at the stars. When I was young, my mother told me that courage is not the absence of fear. It is choosing to act despite the fear. That is what I am doing now. Jake joined her at the wall. Below them, he could see the horizon, humanity's flagship, looking small against the vastness of space. Somewhere on that ship, Captain Morris was waiting to hear what he had decided. Somewhere on Earth, millions of people were hoping for peace. If we do this, Jake said slowly, and it works, what comes next? We can't just go back to our lives like normal. No. Lyra agreed. We would become symbols, representatives of what is possible between our species. It would not be an easy life. One. There would be people on both sides who would hate us for it. Yes. Those who profit from war, or who cannot let go of their hatred. We would need to be careful. Jake thought about this. A life of danger and scrutiny, never able to fully relax, always representing something bigger than themselves. It sounded exhausting, but it also sounded meaningful. Important. Worth doing. He turned to face Lyra directly. I want to know something. Not as a soldier or a diplomat, but as a person. Do you think we could actually make this work? Not the political alliance, but us. You and me. Lyra met his gaze. I do not know. We are very different. Our lifespans, our cultures, our biology. There will be challenges neither of us can anticipate. Her colors shifted to warm gold. But I am willing to try. Are you? Jake took a deep breath and made his decision. Yes, Jake said, his voice steady despite the fear he felt. I'm willing to try. Not because I have to, but because I choose to. I choose to trust you, Lyra. The colors on Lyra's skin exploded into patterns Jake had never seen before. Brilliant golds and silvers cascaded across her body like liquid light. Then let us bond. Let our peoples see what true peace can look like. She led him to the center of the chamber. The floor beneath them softened, creating a depression lined with material that felt warm and alive. Thin tendrils of bioluminescent tissue descended from the ceiling, forming a cocoon of soft light around them. We must be touching, Lyra explained, settling into the space. Her voice had taken on a formal quality, like she was reciting ancient words. The neural connection begins through physical contact and deepens through conscious choice. Jake sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. He could feel heat radiating from her skin. "What do I need to do?" "Give me your hand," Lyra said, extending her own. Jake placed his hand in hers. Her fingers were longer than his, with an extra joint that allowed them to wrap around his hand completely. The moment their skin made contact, he felt a tingling sensation that quickly became a burning warmth, spreading up his arm. "Do not fight it," Lyra said softly. "Open your mind. Think of a memory that matters to you." Jake closed his eyes and thought of his mother. He remembered the day he graduated from the academy, how proud she had looked standing in the crowd. He remembered her smile, the way her eyes had shone with tears of joy. The burning sensation intensified, spreading from his arm into his chest, his head. It felt like fire racing through his veins. Jake gritted his teeth, forcing himself not to pull away. Then, suddenly, the pain shifted into something else entirely. He was standing in a garden made of crystal. Two young Zalthari ran between geometric flowers that chimed like bells when touched. He recognized one of them as Lyra, but younger, her colors brighter and more vibrant. The other was her brother, Thelran. Laughing as they played some game Jake didn't understand, the emotions hit him like a wave. He felt Lyra's love for her brother, pure and overwhelming. He felt her joy in this moment. The simple happiness of childhood before war and responsibility complicated everything. He understood, in a way that words could never convey, what losing Thelran had cost her. The memory shifted. Jake found himself on a Xalthari command ship, staring at tactical displays showing human vessels. He felt Lyra's determination, her sense of duty. He felt her grief as she gave the order to fire, knowing humans would die but believing she was protecting her people. Then came the horror. The realization that the target wasn't a military transport, but a civilian research vessel. Jake experienced Lyra's desperate attempts to abort the attack, her anguish when she learned there were children aboard. He felt her guilt, sharp and cutting, that had haunted her ever since. The memories came faster now, pulling Jake deeper into Lyra's consciousness. He saw her childhood, her training as a warrior, her first battle. He saw the faces of friends lost in the war. He felt her fears, her doubts, her hopes for peace. But the flow wasn't one way. Jake felt his own memories being pulled from him, exposed to Lyra's consciousness. She was experiencing his life now. His childhood on Earth, growing up in a small town under wide blue skies. His decision to join the military, driven by idealism and a desire to make a difference. His first kill, the shock and horror of taking a life. Lyra experienced the Battle of Proxima through Jake's eyes. She felt his terror as Zalthari ships tore through the human fleet. She felt his grief as Danny died in his arms, blood spreading across the deck. She felt Jake's rage, his desire for revenge, and then his slow realization that revenge solved nothing. The bonding went deeper. Jake began to experience what it meant to be Zalthari, to perceive the universe through senses humans didn't possess. He saw colors beyond human spectrum, brilliant shades that had no names in English. He heard harmonics that painted pictures in his mind, creating a symphony of information. He understood Zalthari philosophy, their belief that all consciousness was connected, that separation was an illusion. He felt their religious devotion to the concept of unity, their view that bonding was the highest form of connection two beings could achieve. Lyra, in turn, experienced human passion, the intensity of emotions that burned hot and fast compared to the cooler, longer-lasting feelings of her species. She felt human creativity, the desperate need to create meaning in a short life. She experienced human art, music, literature, and understood the beauty and tragedy of a species that knew it had limited time. They saw each other's darkest moments. Jake's shame over the civilians who had died at Veltara, killed in an attack he had helped plan. The nightmares that still woke him, screaming, in the middle of the night. His fear that he was fundamentally broken, that the war had damaged him beyond repair. Lyra's guilt over Kepler Station. over the research vessel, over every order that had resulted in death. Her terror that she was betraying her people by revealing the secret of bonding, her fear that she wasn't strong enough for what lay ahead. But they also saw each other's hopes. Jake's dream of a universe where humans and Zalthari explored together, where his children could grow up knowing aliens as friends rather than enemies. Lyra's vision of cultural exchange, of her people learning from human creativity while humans learned from Zalthari wisdom. The bonding reached a critical point. For a moment that stretched into infinity, Jake and Lyra were not two separate beings, but one unified consciousness. There were no barriers, no secrets, no deceptions, only complete and total truth. Jake experienced what it was to be Lyra. He knew her fears, her loves, her regrets, her dreams. He knew her better than she knew herself, because he could see her from both inside and outside simultaneously. Lyra experienced what it was to be Jake. She felt his stubborn determination, his loyalty to those he cared about, his willingness to sacrifice for what he believed was right. She understood his humor, his way of deflecting serious emotions with jokes. She saw the man beneath the soldier, and then, slowly, gradually, they began to separate. The unified consciousness split back into two distinct individuals, but both were fundamentally changed. Neither would ever be truly alone again. Jake opened his eyes. He was back in the chamber, still sitting beside Lyra. The bioluminescent tendrils had withdrawn. The floating crystals hummed softly above them. "I understand now," Jake whispered, his voice hoarse. "Why you were willing to risk everything." "As do I," Lyra replied. Her voice had harmonics that Jake could now hear and understand without translation. "Your species' capacity for growth, for choosing hope over despair even when everything seems lost. It is remarkable." They sat together in silence, both processing what had just happened. Jake realized he could now speak and understand Zalthari without the translator device. The language had been part of Lyra's memories, and now it was part of his. Lyra unconsciously ran her hand through her hair, a gesture she had picked up from Jake's memories despite having no hair herself. She caught herself and made a sound that was the Zalthari equivalent of laughter. "This will take some adjustment," she said. "Yeah," Jake agreed. He felt different. He was still himself, still Jake Sullivan. But now, he carried Lyra's experiences as well. He knew things no human had ever known. He understood the Zalthari in ways that would have taken decades of study to achieve. And Lyra carried the same burden and gift. She understood humans now, not as enemies or allies, but as people. Complex, contradictory, beautiful people. 3 days after the bonding, Jake and Lyra stood before a joint council session. The chamber was massive, designed to accommodate both human and Zalthari officials. Humans sat on one side, Zalthari on the other, with a neutral space in the middle where Jake and Lyra waited. Admiral Green stood up from the human delegation, his face hard. "Commander Sullivan, you shared classified military intelligence with an enemy combatant. That constitutes treason under military law." Jake met the Admiral's gaze calmly. "With respect, sir, Princess Lyra did the same thing. She shared Zalthari secrets with me. We both took the same risk. That doesn't excuse what you've done," Green said. "How do we know any of this is real? This bonding could be an elaborate deception." From the Zalthari side, High Chancellor Velmorphus spoke, his colors rippling with anger. "Princess Lyra has revealed our most sacred secret to humans. This is sacrilege of the highest order. She has betrayed her people." Lyra stood tall, her colors steady despite the accusations. "I revealed the truth because peace built on lies will crumble. I have seen into Commander Sullivan's mind. I know with absolute certainty that he wants peace as much as we do." "Words mean nothing," Green insisted. "We need proof." Jake had expected this. "Admiral," Your personal security code was changed 18 days ago. It's a 17-digit sequence that combines your daughter Katie's birthday, your service number, and the coordinates where you lost your left eye in the Battle of Centauri. The exact code is 72319854461120-839. Green's face went pale. How could you possibly know that? Because Lyra saw it in my memories of our final briefing before I left the horizon. I was present when you entered that code to access the secure terminal. Jake looked around the chamber. I can do this with anyone here. Ask me something only you would know. The chamber erupted in chaos. Human officials shouted about security breaches. Zalthari delegates argued about the violation of sacred traditions. But Captain Morris stood up, and her voice cut through the noise. What if they're right? She said loudly. What if this is exactly what we need? The room quieted slightly. Morris continued. For 10 years, we've been locked in a war. Neither side could win. A war based on fear and misunderstanding. These two have shown us another way. A Zalthari scientist named Kethrin spoke up, his colors thoughtful. In our entire history, bonding has been our most sacred ritual, because it makes lies impossible. If humans can truly participate in this, then perhaps they are not as incompatible with us as we believed. This is dangerous, Green argued. If other humans and Zalthari bond, they'll have access to sensitive information, and we will have access to theirs. Lyra pointed out. The bonding creates mutual vulnerability. Neither side can betray the other without betraying themselves. Over the next several weeks, Jake and Lyra worked to prove the value of their bond. They collaborated on joint projects, combining Jake's knowledge of human technology with Lyra's understanding of Zalthari bioengineering. The results exceeded everyone's expectations. They created a new type of engine that used both human mechanical engineering and Zalthari organic components. It was more efficient than anything either species had built alone. They developed communication systems that worked seamlessly between the two species. They even began work on medical treatments that could help both humans and Zalthari. More importantly, they spoke publicly about their experiences. Jake described seeing the universe through Zalthari senses, understanding their culture from the inside. Lyra shared what she had learned about human resilience and creativity. Slowly, public opinion began to shift. Not everyone was convinced. Hardliners on both sides saw the bonding as betrayal. An extremist human group calling themselves Earth First planted a bomb aboard the horizon, hoping to kill both Jake and Lyra during a diplomatic visit. The attack happened during a tour of the ship's engineering section. Jake felt a sudden spike of danger through his bond with Lyra. At the same moment, Lyra's enhanced senses detected chemical traces of the explosive. Bomb, they said simultaneously. They moved together, Jake using his knowledge of the ship's layout, while Lyra's senses tracked the exact location of the device. They found it hidden behind a power conduit with less than a minute before detonation. Jake started evacuating the area using emergency protocols Lyra had learned from his memories. Lyra carefully disarmed the device, using techniques she had seen in Jake's training. Working together, they saved dozens of lives. When the news broke, something changed. People began to see the bond, not as a political arrangement, but as a real partnership. Humans and Zalthari working together, protecting each other, achieving things neither could do alone. Volunteers started coming forward. Scientists curious about the bonding process. Diplomats wanting to truly understand the other species. Soldiers tired of fighting, who wanted their sacrifices to mean something. The first group of volunteer pairs underwent the bonding. It was risky. 2 of the attempts failed due to neural incompatibility, though both participants survived without permanent damage. But 8 succeeded. Those 8 bonded pairs emerged transformed. They confirmed everything Jake and Lyra had said. More importantly, they became living proof that humans and Zalthari could truly unite. Dr. Claire Foster, a human xenobiologist, bonded with Zalthari researcher Ventalis. Together they made breakthroughs in understanding both species biology that would have taken decades of separate research. Lieutenant Nathan Cole, a human pilot, bonded with Zalthari navigator Silvara. They developed new combat maneuvers that combined human aggression with Zalthari precision. Then taught these techniques to mixed crews. Each bonded pair became ambassadors for a new kind of relationship between the species. They showed that cooperation wasn't just possible, but beneficial. 6 months after the initial bonding, construction began on the Unity, a ship designed and built jointly by humans and Zalthari. It incorporated technology from both civilizations, with a mixed crew of bonded and unbonded personnel working together. Jake and Lyra stood on the bridge as the ship prepared for its maiden voyage. Around them, humans and Zalthari worked side by side, communicating easily through a combination of verbal language and the shared understanding that came from working with bonded crew members. "Did you imagine it would go this far?" Jake asked quietly. Lyra's colors shifted to warm gold. "I hoped. But hope and certainty are very different things." She looked at him. "What we did was insane. By any measure." Trenting the certain. "Completely insane," Jake agreed with a smile. "And it worked." Admiral Green approached them. His attitude toward Jake and Lyra had changed dramatically after the bombing attempt. Seeing them work together to save lives had convinced him of the bond's value. "Sullivan, Princess Lyra, we have a proposal," Green said. "The outer colonies, both human and Xalthari, were hit hard by the war. They need help rebuilding. We want you to lead a joint task force to assist them." High Chancellor Velmorphus, who had also become a supporter, joined them. "Both councils have approved this mission. You have shown our peoples a new path forward. Now we ask you to help others see it as well." Jake and Lyra exchanged a glance. Through their bond, they didn't need words to communicate. They both knew the answer. "We accept," they said together. As the Unity powered up its hybrid engines, Jake felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. The war was truly over, replaced by something better. Not just an absence of conflict, but actual cooperation and understanding. He looked at Lyra, his wife, his partner, his bondmate. Through their connection, he felt her emotions mirroring his own. Pride in what they had accomplished. Hope for what came next. And underneath it all, a growing affection that was becoming something deeper. "What do you think the outer colonies will be like?" Lyra asked. "Probably a mess," Jake said honestly. "War leaves scars that take a long time to heal. Then we will help them heal." Lyra said firmly. "Together." Lyra. 16. The Unity jumped to faster than light speed, carrying its mixed crew toward the frontier. Behind them, on Earth and on Zalthari worlds across dozens of systems, more humans and Zalthari were beginning to see each other not as enemies but as potential partners. The bonding program expanded. Within a year, there were over 100 bonded pairs working throughout human and Zalthari space. They became teachers, showing others how to bridge the gap between species. They became leaders, guiding the integration of the two civilizations. Not everything was easy. There were setbacks and challenges. Some people on both sides would never accept the peace. But the momentum had shifted. The future belonged to cooperation, not conflict. Jake and Lyra spent the next 2 years traveling between colonies, helping communities rebuild. They mediated disputes, shared technology, and demonstrated through their partnership what was possible. One evening, on a colony world called New Haven that housed both humans and Zalthari, they stood on a hill overlooking the settlement. Below them, children of both species played together, already learning to see each other as friends rather than aliens. "We did this," Lyra said softly, "by choosing to trust when it seemed impossible. By being willing to be vulnerable," Jake added. "By sharing everything." Lyra's hand found his. "I do not regret it. Any of it." "Neither do I," Jake said. Through their bond, they felt each other's contentment. The mission that had seemed impossible had succeeded beyond anyone's dreams. Their marriage, born from desperation and duty, had become real partnership built on genuine understanding and growing love. The first night they had spent together had shattered all expectations. But from those shattered pieces, something beautiful had emerged. Not just for them, but for billions of beings across the stars. The war was over. The future had begun. And it belonged to those brave enough to trust, to bond, to become something new together.